Are we up and running?
We should be in just a sec.
Okay.
Delane, are we on?
Let me refresh. Yes, we're live.
Okay,
Okay. Do we have Linda?
not yet. I'm assuming she's going to be joining us.
We've got a quorum.
Yes.
Okay. So we'll call the meeting to order. Proper notice was given and we do have a quorum. So shall we go on to pledge allegiance?
Yes.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America
and to the
and
republic
the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
We have no public comment, so we can go straight into item number 1.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, consider HEDC strategic plan for 2020-2023.
All right.
There we go.
Okay. Gonna go ahead and try to make sure people can see this. This is probably too small for a lot of you to read, but you all have received this, and I just wanted to kind of touch base on it a little bit, one page at a time in just a minute. This is still a work in progress, if you will. The strategic plan, I had hoped that I could try to get it all together by today, but that's not going to happen. There's a few places where I still need to get some input from some folks. But I just wanted to talk about the layout itself and just talk a little bit about the plan itself. As you recall, for some of you, we started the planning process with a workshop back in February, pre-COVID. So some things have happened since then, obviously, that have kind of sidetracked us a little bit. But the plan talks about, the introduction is just basically kind of an overview of planning process and how we went through it. Then we have a vision and mission statement. We talk about the city's vision statement, their mission statement, which is in their comprehensive plan. And then the EDC's vision was to help create inclusive economic development to the benefit of the citizens of Harlingen, whereby inclusive economic development is defined by us as giving all entities or individuals equitable business opportunities to succeed and to profit in Harlingen. I could have expanded a little bit more, but you know, I think that what we were looking at was really kind of on the business aspects of things, and that's where we tried to focus it on that. And obviously, our mission statement has not changed since I've been here, and even before I was here. The EDC is the mission of the EDC is to improve the quality of life of the citizens of Harlingen through the creation of wealth, jobs, and investments. There was quite a few stakeholders that had some input and are still having input on not just the strategic plan, but everything that we work on over time. And then this was just kind of a summary on page 4 is a summary of the strengths or the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. There could be others, but this was kind of the, like I said, the summary of what we had talked about back in February. And then after that, I went into a few pages that really kind of discussed our labor market. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this a little bit. And really, I did it because right now we have had such a disruption in our labor market that we got to focus, I think, over the next few years on trying to get back to where we were. This graph, for example, that we're looking at right now shows Brownsville, Harlingen, and San Benito's unemployment rates from January of 2018 all the way to July of 2020. So just a little over a year and a half. And as you can tell, coming up just back in March and April, that big old spike where our unemployment skyrocketed to above 16%. We were down in the 4% range almost, 5.5, 6% was where we were hovering. And we have made a comeback, I think, in the last few months. July, we're at 10.6. And same thing with our employment growth. You look at it, been pretty steady for the last few years. I mean, this is going back from October of 2013. And if you look at our labor force, it goes up and down a little bit, but we have never seen this kind of spike. So we're in unprecedented times in terms of job loss and then trying to recover from that job loss. So a lot of what we're doing in the next 3 years, I think, is going to be recovery from COVID. And we're still in the middle of it, so it's kind of hard to recover from it. Some of the hardest hit sectors that I talk about in the plan is, of course, leisure and hospitality, trade, transportation, and utilities, retail trade, and even government. Education and healthcare were also hit pretty hard. And then I talk a little bit about education in terms of our graduates, people that are graduating from our higher education institutions. If you look at kids that are graduating from UTRGV, for example, and some of the other schools that are here locally, when they get out of school, and this was a slide that I got from Salvador Contreras, who's a professor there at UTRGV, that he was sharing this with the Rio Grande Valley Partnership. But when you get out of school, kids here in the Valley, both in the McAllen Edinburgh Mission MSA and the Brownsville Harlingen MSA, make probably a lot less than, well, they do statistically make a lot less than most of the kids in other parts of the state in their first couple of years out of the university with a bachelor's degree. So that's some of the challenges that we have that we're working on. And then we're going to talk, the plan goes into talking about our goals, strategies, and tasks. And I looked at 6 goals that we are going to be working on. Our program of work is going to focus on this 6 goals as well. But the goals in general are investing in human capital through specific workforce development and training activities, increasing Harlingen's industrial base. Those kind of go hand in hand. Increasing our retail sales tax revenues and retail establishments, or actually in the short term, actually maintaining some of them is kind of a challenge as well. Increasing our healthcare facilities and offerings, advocating for transportation infrastructure improvements, and developing a robust entrepreneurship and innovation hub. Then the rest of the plan is really kind of talking about those goals and some of the benchmarking that we've done, and then our objectives for these goals by year. So for next year, for example, in terms of the number of grants that we put out this year, we had 2 for a total of 173,000. The goal is to try to increase, or the objective is to try to increase on that goal, on that benchmark every year. And there's a strategy to that, and that strategy is listed. And then the tasks necessary include completing the benchmarking on some of these, identifying high demand occupations, budgeting, and then reviewing grant requests as needed. So that, for example, is some of the things that we'll be working on just for that particular goal. Then we go back into goal number 2. And a lot of this we haven't done yet because benchmarking is going to take a little bit of time. but we're talking about trying to benchmark exactly how many square feet of industrial space we have, what's the property value of that industrial space, what are our occupancy rates, and then what's our industrial employment, how many acres of shovel-ready land do we have, and then we're gonna, and on some of these I still have blanks, but this is what I'm talking about, where a lot of this, I really do need the board's input. And so you can do this offline as you go through this, print out this and write it up, or just send me some comments on each of those things. And what I'd like to do is just over the next few meetings, kind of go over each of these goals and making sure that we're all contributing to the strategic plan. And like I said, there's 6 different goals. For each goal, there's a benchmark or several benchmarks. There's several objectives. There's a strategy, and then the tasks that are assigned. And the tasks will be actually very important in terms of timelines, because that'll determine what our program of work is for not only the upcoming fiscal year, but the next 2 years after that. So I'm not quite there yet, but welcome any feedback and any help as time permits on this type of, on this activity. Again, so I don't want any action. I'm not requesting action on the strategic plan. I did send it out to y'all, but like I said, it's still a draft form. I'd like for y'all to continue taking a look at it, and we'll get to it at a later time as well. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, and let me see if I can find it. Okay. So, Mr. Chair, if you're okay with this, number 2. You're
Sorry, I'm muted. I apologize. Yep, so moving on to item 2, HEDC program of work for fiscal year 2021.
okay, thank you. On your screen, you have the program, the draft program of work that I'm asking for y'all to actually adopt today. It is very similar to the program of work we've had for the last 8 years and more in terms of the structure of the document. We continue to have that same mission statement. Our guiding principles haven't changed except for the highlighted part. I added something to it because it's a little different this year. You know, most of our focus has always been on larger employers and working with what we would call trying to hit the home run out of the ballpark. But this year we've focused on hitting a lot of singles and bringing those singles around and trying to make those smaller businesses actually stay afloat, or giving them that boost that they need to make it through this pandemic. So there is some discussion about the global pandemic here. And then some of our focus will be on helping those small businesses as well. So again, the goals, if you look at the strategic plan, the program of work is derived from the strategic plan, and it's just specific to this fiscal year. So the goals are here, the strategies are listed. I could go through it, but I think that you all had an opportunity to go through this already. And then increasing our industrial base would be goal number 2. Again, workforce development is goal number 1. Increasing the retail sales tax revenues and retail establishments is goal number 3. What's highlighted is something that's new in terms of different from last year. Definitely working on doing some online webinars for training some of these smaller businesses, and then developing this help for small businesses into more of a long-term resiliency fund, which I think over the next few years, when money starts coming back in from those people that have actually benefited from the fund, we can talk about trying to recycle that money into another program. We're going to continue to work with ICSC. We're working with, obviously, different developers, retail coaches working with us on trying to identify those developers and those end users that are interested in Harlingen. We're going to start, little, I guess, webinars on educating some of our brokers in the community on some of the opportunities here in Harlingen. Definitely want to work on the Cameron Crossing project, and that includes everything around the convention center and Bass Pro Shop. Obviously, developing a plan for enhancing our existing large retail centers, including Via Vista Mall, are some of the things that we want to continue to work on this year. And aside from the retail part, the fourth goal is also increasing our healthcare facilities and offerings.
Hey, Rodell, before you move on, I've got a question, and it's really for the mayor. Talking about your bullet point, develop long-term emergency revolving loan fund with participation from other funding sources. Chris, could you give us just a short version of what the CARES Act money that the city got can be used for? You know, I know I've read, newspaper stories about housing assistance and various other things. Could you give us just a real short version of how the city can use that money?
Well, it's kind of a work in progress, and it has been changing and evolving over the last couple of months. We now think that we're going to be able to use more of that funding for some operational needs that we didn't think that we were going to be able to use it for, including things like hazard pay for police and fire, which we did implement. A couple of things that we need that I think clearly can be used for are small business programs like the HELP program, so there's a potential for perhaps some type of reimbursement to HED, to the Development Corporation, from some of that money. I said a potential because we need to sort of, I still need to get a good handle on where we think we're going to be directing the majority of it. Another place that it can be used for, I think pretty clearly, is grants to hospitals. And I've mentioned that to the hospitals. They have not applied for any grants, but it could clearly be used for those purposes. So at the beginning, it was very restrictive. We weren't sure how we were going to be able to use that money. The restrictions are starting to loosen up a little bit, and it looks like there are perhaps more opportunities for money. All of it's guided by the Treasury Department regulations regarding the CARES Act. And so whatever the Treasury Department says we can use the money for, we can use the money for. And I'll tell you, it's been very confusing and very confusing. Now, one of the things that we've talked to Congressman Velo about, he's very interested in, he's aware of these issues related to restrictions on the use of the CARES Act money. And he's trying to, help with opening that up, and also extending the ability to use that money past the end of the year, which would also be helpful, because we might be able to clearly be able to find uses for it if we can have a longer period of time to use it. Sorry if that was too long of an explanation.
No, that was helpful. Thanks, Mayor.
One of the things we cannot use it for is we cannot use it for revenue shortfalls. I want to point that out. That's been very clear. That has not changed. The information from the Treasury has evolved, as the mayor pointed out. But one of the things that has not changed is the use of the monies for revenue shortfalls.
Okay. So goal number 4 is to continue to work with UTRGV and others to work on the med school and other related academic needs. Obviously, the Neuroscience Institute is under construction, and early college, high school, general education building is under construction as well. So those are good things, and we're going to continue to work on developing those relationships and strengthening those relationships. There are several projects that we've talked about in our previous meeting that are within this category in terms of working with developers and for some medical office properties. We do have 30 acres of property that is within what we, loosely term the medical district between Harlingen Medical Center and Valley Baptist. And so that's something that we need to continue to work towards developing as well. Goal number 5 is advocate for transportation infrastructure improvements. This is something that we've always had in our forte, if you will. I serve on the I-69 for Texas Alliance, obviously trying to lobby federal and state for additional dollars for infrastructure improvements along I-69. But we're also working with the Port of Harlingen and some of their efforts to enhance the port. We work with Valley International Airport on their efforts to expand their services. And we'll continue to work with Cameron County on promoting the Los Indios Bridge as well. So that's something we're going to continue to work on. We've also reached out to South and are working with some folks on trying to increase traffic from the Mexican trucks that are crossing over and making sure that we can identify opportunities for them to cross over using our free trade bridge at Los Indios. Goal number 6 would be to develop a robust entrepreneurship, and that's misspelled, entrepreneur shop, innovation hub. Sorry about that. Didn't catch that. Anyway, so part of what that is really kind of trying to focus on continuing to develop those relationships that we have with the recipients of funds from the HELP program, but also to expand on that a little bit more and making sure that our small businesses don't feel like they are left out. Like we said, we've kind of modified our vision a little bit to be an inclusive economic development organization. And so some of that sometimes includes working with the kind of people that we typically weren't working with, but they are the backbone to our continued job growth. And so we're going to do that this year. We're going to do more of media, local media, press releases, that type of thing, sending out those things, supporting entrepreneurs who want to go through the Kaufman program. We've done that in the last few years. We're going to do at least 2 sessions this next year and maybe even more than that. And then the program of work also, we always talk about our positions, and we haven't changed in fiscal year 2021, which is upcoming. We haven't changed what we have in terms of our positions. We do have an empty position, if you will, that's not filled, and that would be the staff accountant's senior researcher. One, because Dan and his team have done such a great job, but 2, because since we're getting into a point where we're going to be looking at additional office space or some different office space than what we have, instead of crowding people in here and making it to where we have to adopt some other social distancing requirements that will put a little hamper on some of our space here. We'll wait until we get that new office space, or we can do something here to bring those folks in. So that's where we're at with the program of work. Again, if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Otherwise, I'm looking for somebody to make a motion to hopefully adopt this program of work for next year.
Like to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And who seconded?
All of us did, I think.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
I,
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Item 3, consider budget amendments for fiscal year 2019, 2020.
Okay. Again, it's a little different doing Zoom meetings, but trying to share my screen and making sure that we have the right things up there. Let's see. Okay. So in our last meeting, I sent this memo as part of your packet, which was kind of highlights on the budget amendments. I don't know. I hope that these numbers are big enough on your screens. If they're not, let me know and I can expand it a little bit more. But basically, what this shows is our revenues and our expenditures for 2 years ago, this past fiscal year in terms of projections and approved budget. And then this column right here, AK, is the one with the proposed budget amendments. And we have quite a bit in proposed budget amendments, but if you really look at it, and this is the detail on it, 21.6 million of that plus another 2.5 million of that is really because of the bonds, the refunding of the bonds that we did. This is money that came in, but it's also money that came out in terms of the profit and loss statement, if you will. So when we were first getting into the pandemic, we made an adjustment to our budget that really reduced our revenues. And thankfully, we haven't had to reduce our revenues too much. So I'm requesting that we bump that back up by about 1.5 million. And as you can see, instead of being at 3.2, we'd be at 4.7. Then some of these are also in increases. There's a little decrease in the interest line item. And I can get into details on those, but basically our text pool and now funds have not been performing as they were in the past. And it's really because of such a volatile market at this time. But all in all, we've increased our revenue line by 23.1, almost $23.2 million. And then on our expenditures, if you look at our administration, they're all in the negative. So we're all actually reducing the budget in our expenditures in our administration by $214,000. Our marketings, we're reducing our marketing budget by $42.8 million or $42,000. I'm sorry. And then on our direct business incentives line, we're reducing the budget from the approved budget by $554,000. And I'll get into some of the numbers as to why we're doing that on that one. Fox Valley Molding, that's $54,000 that we're not spending this fiscal year. I think we're going to end up spending some funds on Fox Valley Molding, but not for at least another year because we extended that agreement last meeting to allow them more time to meet their goals in terms of hiring. So if they do meet their goals, then we'll expend that $54,000. If they don't, then we won't expend that money. We had set aside $100,000, for example, on Harlingen Industrial Park improvements. We will have spent probably $85,000 by the end of this month, September. So there's still $15,000 that will be left unfinished in terms of the landscaping project going on right now. The park at Roosevelt, we had set aside $100,000. We haven't spent that yet. We talked about that in the last meeting and some of the things that we're working on. So that will be money that will carry forward into the new budget. Again, as you can tell, the City of Harlingen sidewalk project is another large item at 242,000. The city hasn't requested it yet. I'm sure the city will be requesting it, but at this point we haven't expended it, so it'll be carried forward into the next fiscal year as well. Saatchi Polymers has not taken the loan that we offered of 50,000, and they may not take it, which is not a bad thing for them. They're doing well and they're getting set up. So that's where most of that adjustment of the 550,000 comes in. The other part is that we are not expending all the money from the HELP program this fiscal year. We're going to carry some of that over into the next fiscal year. But we also had $150,000 extra that we spent on United Launch Alliance. That was money that should have been paid out 2 fiscal years ago, but was not. So we want to make sure that we account for that in our budget amendment.
Hey, Rodell, remind me, did we budget anything for next year for a HELPS type program next fiscal year?
Yes, and we'll go over that in a minute, but yeah, there is actually for the HELP program next year, we've got 367,000. So the wonderful thing about spreadsheets is you can spread them out like that and you can collapse them back in. So yeah, specifically for that line, we've got 367. And that's the 367 that we did not expend this year.
Took out of this year, yeah.
Right. Now, if we don't expend the 633 for whatever reason, and we may not because we still haven't seen a very big increase in the applications, then whatever is left over, because right now I think we're close to 500,000. If it's 500,000 that's left over, then we're going to later on adjust that proposed budget from next year to carry forward that 500,000. So that eventually it will be $1 million that was put out by the EDC for that resiliency program. And then, like I mentioned before, we brought some money in through, because of the refunding of the bonds. That money went back into the bond escrow and then the cost of issuance. And so these two lines are basically the same exact dollar amounts as the revenues that were coming in. So that balances it out. So that's it in terms of just kind of the highlights on the budget amendments.
Thank you. A lot of work went into that. Thank you. Let's see. We need to approve that, don't we?
Yeah, I'm requesting that we get you all approve the budget amendments as presented.
Yeah, and just so I'm following here on my computer, what's the net effect of all this for fiscal year 1920?
The net effect is we had a $7.5 million budget that we are now at $30 million. But if you really look at basically 24 million of that coming in from the bonding, there wasn't a whole lot of change between the previously approved budget and the budget amendments. It's more of reallocating to the different categories. And if you look at how that impacts our cash flow over the time period, we started the fiscal year with about $9 million in cash. Okay, that doesn't include our land and other assets. So the revenues that we're bringing in, the expenditures, and of course there's an adjustment. This adjustment is basically what we're pulling out of fund balance. Gives us an ending cash balance of about 8.4. Of that 8.4, we've got 2 million set aside in a reserve account when we sold the United Healthcare building way back probably almost 7.5 years ago. And then we've got $2.5 million left over from the funds that we generated from the University Center sale. And I'm saying 2.5 million because basically I'm keeping track of how much money we spent on land acquisitions for the UTRGV dual credit high school and also monies that we gave back to the 4B. And then, so that means we've got an additional $3.9 million almost of funds. So for the budget amendments, like I said, it didn't really make a whole lot. It's just of change. It's really kind of a reallocation of some of those funding items, and actually aligning the revenues to where, instead of saying we were going to expect a $3.2 million in sales tax, for example, we're actually much higher than that.
Yeah, so I guess my question is the net effect of all this, based on what you said, we're running a budget deficit of 600,000 that we're taking out of reserves, roughly?
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct. From the fund balance. Yeah.
Okay.
Rodell, a quick question on the HELPS program loans. Are you projecting the principal repayment in the next fiscal year, the first years of that? I didn't see repayment in there.
The repayment on the loans will start probably June, July, and August of next fiscal year, and they're not very big dollar amounts, and so that's why I didn't actually put it in there for the next fiscal year. Again, it will have an impact, but it's not going to be a very big impact. And if we do, as we've talked about, trying to create this resiliency fund, then we're probably going to want to hold on to those funds anyway. So it's not money that's going to be expended again right away. So I didn't put in on the revenue line for the next fiscal year those repayment loan, which would actually fall under right here.
There it is. Okay.
Yeah. So looking at next year's and jumping ahead, there is a little bit of money in there. There's $17,000, whereas we don't really have anything. So that's some of the payments that will be coming in from the repayment of the various folks. So if you look at that, it starts in June again, and this is looking at June of next year, $1,300 or almost $1,400 in repayments, and then it ramps up as we start getting more loans, and that's where that $17,000 comes from for next year's repayment of the HELP program. So there's some money in there for that.
Thank you. So bigger impact 2 fiscal years from now.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, so for next fiscal year, because it's towards the end of the next fiscal year, and it wasn't all at this point 49 entities that have been receiving funds. It'll start ramping up, and then by next 2 years from now, the average monthly revenues from those payments will probably be in along the lines of about $10,000, $12,000 per month. So. Well, that's our highlights for the budget amendments. And now we're kind of jumping ahead into the actual budget.
Okay. We need a motion to accept the budget amendments, don't we?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Thank you, Mickey. We get a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All approved, same, or all against, same sign. Okay, motion approves. Thank you.
All
Item
right.
4 is consider action on proposed fiscal year 2021 budget.
Okay, I'm still sharing the screen, right? Looks like it. Make sure I got everything that I'm supposed to have on there. Oh, here it is. Okay. And I've never done this before, but I wanted to kind of show a PowerPoint at the same time that we're looking at the spreadsheet. So here we go. Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've had a couple of big events that have impacted our budget. Last year was the sale of the University Center, and then this year was the refunding of the bonds, and that's why we end up last year with a $10 million budget. So if you look at the spreadsheet, the sale of the asset was $4.3 million. That's from the University Center sale. So you take that out, and then you're looking at probably about $6.1 million worth of revenues. And then if you look at the refunding of the bonds and you take that out, then you're looking at about 6.5 for this fiscal year. So fairly consistent, some increases because the sales tax have actually been continuing to increase, except this year's kind of a little bit flatter. But what I want to talk about was just specifically the sales tax and the projections on the sales tax. So the sales tax last year was at 4.7. This year we're currently projecting $4.6 million. For next year, I'm taking a conservative approach, and I'll go into that into detail at about basically a 5% decline over this year's numbers to 4.467. And the reason I'm doing that is just I'd rather be a little bit on the conservative side. I know that the city's doing it a little bit differently, but I started looking at the numbers and looking at trends. And if you look at the trends, we have been on a 3% growth rate since way back in 1999. And so you look at all these little numbers over here, and you can see monthly numbers. And if you aggregate it, this is what our sales tax revenue line looks over the last almost 20 years. We've had a dip, obviously, in this fiscal year, which is right here. And so we're actually right below that 3% growth line this fiscal year. We're at a negative 2.44 is my projection. But for next year, we're going to drop just a little bit more, and then we'll start rising back up in the future years. And we'll get back on this growth line pretty quick. But that's really kind of, and if we go back into looking at, I know this is a lot of numbers, but I track all these numbers. You go back and you look at sales tax receipts from the city standpoint since fiscal year 1999 projected over the last few years, and you look at the column over here that has growth rates. I'll expand into the growth rates. That's the graph that you all are looking at, essentially, because whether it's a sales tax receipt line or the growth rate line, this is going to be the same pattern. And so we've seen some years where we've had 9% growth, 7.5% growth. We've had a dip during the recession of 6.8. We had an 8% growth years ago. Most recently, 7.3 was a strong year, and that was 2 years ago. So this past year, we had a smaller growth over the previous year. This is a 2.24 or 2.4 that I was talking about, and that's only with August and September numbers being recorded at slightly below last year's numbers. So this is the city's 2%. Obviously, our numbers are a little bit different, but I'm looking at percentages. And then so I just took that line and did it at 95%, and this is where that 5% decrease comes in. So I know that I'm talking a lot about revenues, but I think that's it's worth mentioning where that number comes from and how I got to it. Aside from those revenues, investment income has been reduced quite a bit in the last few years. When you look at our investment income, where is it? Here. Last year, from tech school and now, we received over $100,000, closer to $130,000, actually 133. And this year we're projecting almost half of that. And I don't don't necessarily understand why, but if you look at these line items on a month-to-month basis, in October, we were still doing pretty good at 11,000, November at 9,000, up until basically February, and maybe it's a markets because of COVID. February, that tech school earnings went down from 8,600 to 5,800. Then in April, it dropped down to 2,500. And as you can tell, just looking month by month, it's continued to drop down. And even the now account has dropped down pretty significantly. And so instead of trying to project some large numbers for next year, I'm taking a very conservative approach and just projecting 12,000, which is 1,000 per month on textbook and 200 per month on the now account as well. That's assuming that we continue to maintain about $8 million in the bank. As we expend some of these monies, then that number will also come down. But that's really where most of that is coming from. On the miscellaneous line item, just to get you all, we talked about the $17,000, that being some of the monies that will be coming in back from the HELP program. Hi-Fi, the share of Hi-Fi land sale, this was from ITD. ITD has already paid off that note, and so there won't be any income coming in from that. The miscellaneous is really the contribution from Bass Pro Shops for their taxes on the property itself. Our lease is a triple net lease in terms of taxes, so they have to give us that amount. So it's kind of a wash. There's $350,000 coming in and $350,000 in taxes going out for Bass Pro Shop. And then we continue to receive some funds from Valley International Airport for marketing the airport and the Aerotropolis. The other thing that's of note at this point is that this is a deficit budget, again, because of all the different projects that we're doing. We're looking at transferring from our fund balance $1.248 million. The 78,000 is money that comes in from a 380 agreement, and the 70,000 is money that comes in from the city for reimbursement from the Harlingen Corners project that was done many years ago through the TERS. And so that's where that money is coming from. Some people don't like to put in a transfer from a fund balance so that you can actually show the negative. It's pretty transparent. You know, if it wasn't for this number, we would have $5.6 million in revenues, and we'd have $6.8 million in expenditures, and it wouldn't be a balanced budget. The deficit would be the 1.248. So that's where that comes from, in case somebody was wondering where that comes from. On our expenditures, again, I'm anticipating one new hire. I'm not sure when. It just depends on on how we work out the space, and also merit increases for employees that we talked about. There's some increased maintenance costs due to the ownership of the what I used to call the Bells building, and then cleaning up some of the properties and maintaining some of those properties out there along Roosevelt Road. Our advertising expenses are going to be slightly higher, but they're still well below the 10% that's allowed by statute. These were all in your packet in fine detail. If you all want to go through it, I can do that. I will go through the business incentive line, but first I'd like to see if there's any questions on the administrative line items. Okay. On the marketing, I can also get into specifically where we're talking about that. And just look, and I know this is small, I'm sorry, but let me make this a lot bigger so that you all can see this. This is really just the detail on the marketing, even more detail than most people see. but we've got $18,000 in fees for using outside agencies to be to help us with some of the creative work that Celine does. We do $1,200 in direct mail, or that's what we're proposing. $36,000 in travel for marketing. There's not going to be a whole lot of travel until things change in terms of COVID, but that $36,000 covers registration fees and some sponsorships in the virtual conferences that we're attending. And then some of the advertising that we're going through, we're going to be spending, and this is on an annual basis, almost $10,000 in Mexico industry news. That's really doing well right now. We've been doing that for the last 6 months or so. RG Vision is a publication here locally, and we're anticipating spending about $10,000 with them. Valley Business Report, $4,600. Texas Board of Business, $5,200. Mega Doctor News, $6,200. Expansion Solutions, and this is probably 4 times throughout the year, $11,200. Obviously, there's other publications like Area Development, Business Facilities, Texas Real Estate Business. These are publications, and they're also online publications. So it's print and online. And then we're looking at, and Celine will go into this once we actually, this is just a budget. So we're not actually spending anything above $10,000. We need approval from the board if it's to one direct resource. So in our next meeting, we'll talk about Valley Central digital ads. I'm putting it in the budget right now, but that doesn't give me the authority to spend it. That's just in the budget until you all either approve it or not approve it. But we're wanting to request $27,000 for Valley Central's digital ads. And then on social media ads, $1,500. That's a little bit every year to boost and promote some of the posts that we have on either Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or whatnot. And this is really kind of designed to focus on the small business community more than anybody else, because, you know, except for Business Facilities, Expansion Solutions, and Area Development, and those larger national publications, the social media stuff is really kind of the local focus, if you will. Business View magazine is a publication the airport is pushing, and obviously they have requested that we partner with them, and so that would be a partnering in that publication. And then there's various sponsorships that we do for different events like Texas Economic Development Conference, International Economic Development and Industrial Asset Management Councils. And then we're going to be doing a series of videos that we call it Choose Harlingen videos. And so we set aside $10,000 for that. Aside from that, from time to time, we buy what we call some bling, or I forget what the word is for promotional items. Anyway, that would be, Celine, help me out here. What does that mean?
Swag.
Swag, there you go, thank you. And I said $15,000 aside for something, kind of a contingency in case something comes up. We set aside $45,000 every year as a commitment to Bass Pro Shops as part of our lease agreement with them to provide advertising in the form of 2 billboards. Last year and lately it's been less than the 45, but that's what we budget for in terms of our marketing. So that's a lot of detail. That's where that number comes in, the 171,220. And going on to the direct business incentives, just to make sure that everybody is clear on what we're looking at for that one. We talked about carrying forward $54,000 for Fox Valley Molding. That's where that's at. We've set aside for the proposed new budget $165,000 for Harlingen Industrial Park improvements. Some of that is carry forward from this fiscal year, $15,000. $150,000 would be as an expansion for a phase 2, which could include some improved signage out at the industrial park, and even doing some landscaping along Grimes instead of just in the industrial way to match up with that. The park at Roosevelt, we've talked about the project that is working out there, and some of the funding for some of the testing and some of the improvements, we've set aside $100,000 as more of a contingency to have some monies to do some of those things. Obviously, we're going to be applying to the Economic Development Administration and other funding sources for grants for that type of project. And we've talked about that last week in executive session. $12,000 is set aside for the Public Improvement District. That would be legal fees that might be expended in working on a public improvement district if we decide to go that route. There's the $242,000 that we had not expended for this past fiscal year back into next fiscal year for the sidewalk project for the city. Poli Sachi's $50,000 is carried forward as well. Project Target 2.1. Target is not, the Target 2.1 is TJ Maxx, if you all recall. So TJ Maxx should be open and operational by the end of this year, maybe hopefully before Christmas, but definitely before the end of the fiscal year. And therefore, the agreement that we made with them will we will expend that $400,000. Johnny Rockets and Frankie Flaves, we have agreements with them, and that's basically a reimbursement on a percentage of the sales tax that they generate. So that'll be money set aside for them. So that for all those programs is a $975,000 plus United Launch Alliance. We've got $300,000 set aside for them. Of the money that we talked about, the health program, projecting that we can spend $633,000 this year. Next year we'll set aside $367,000. But if we don't spend that 633 later on, I'll do a budget amendment to add to this 367. Project Landlord, we talked about that in executive session, but that's the money that will be expended through the end of the fiscal year. So that gives us almost $1.8 million in direct business incentives that we're projecting for this next fiscal year. And then going into these other programs that we talked about in our program of work, we expended $100,000 in the Goal Line Assistance Program to the TSDC Foundation. They have very little of that money left over this year, but they still are pushing some monies out to students who are almost finished with their education and need a little help financially. So we're setting aside $90,000 for maybe a continuation of that program or a modification of that program for next year.
Did they give us any kind of reporting on that, or?
Yes, and they're working on trying to give us something that we can present to you at the next board meeting. But yes, they'll give us a report and show us exactly how much money went out to the different the number of students and tell us a little bit more about those students that actually benefited. They're actually putting together a book for us to review in terms of letters from the students and thank you notes and that type of thing. So if at any time anybody has any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind. It's not going to impact my presentation. On the regional memberships, we've got 25,000 set aside. Most of that would be for Rio South Texas Economic Council. Our membership dues with Rio South Texas is 21,875, which is what we expended this past fiscal year. I set aside some additional monies in case other opportunities to join other regional memberships pop up. And then on the I-69 Alliance, I set aside $9,500. That may include some travel related to the membership that we pay to. We pay it to the Rio Grande Valley Partnership, who in turn pools it together with other communities, and South Texas in general pays to the I-69 Texas Alliance. But that gives us also a seat at the table. The $15,000 that we've set aside is for the Kaufman Series of entrepreneurship training. We talk about that in our program of work, and we want to continue doing that. And then we've got $150,000 basically set aside for workforce solutions and job training initiatives, whether they're through TSCC or some other matching grant program. Workforce solutions also has a high demand occupation program where they ask the local EDCs to match dollar for dollar with what they put out. We did that just this year, just recently with the TSDC auto body program, and you'll be seeing some advertising and some media on that very, very soon. So that's where that money comes from, that $289,000. And then on the property taxes, last year we spent $334,000. Much of that was the Bass Pro contribution that we talked about. The next year, because we have a few more properties, some of them are not Bass Pro related, and there's $25,000 that we've set aside on top of the Bass Pro monies for us to pay property taxes. The only time we do not pay property taxes is when we have property that's under development. So if we're working on property, trying to make actual improvements to the property, then Alan and I go and ask for exemptions. We do have an ag exemption on these lands as well if they're being farmed. We try to, like any other business entity, minimize our property tax. But just remember, anytime there's an exemption, there's also subject to rollback taxes once there's a conveyance of property. So that's part of what we have there. On the debt services, just want to make sure that everybody understands where we're at with that. And it's definitely a savings because of the refunding of the bonds. Next year, we're looking at on our principal a payment of about 1.9, 1,865,000, which was less than last year's. But our interest is really the one where we have a savings, where 2 years ago we were at $1.5 million in payments of interest. This year they rolled some of that into the bond, but that's why we had a number at 745. Next year we're at $900,000 in interest. And then next year that will also, in February, we will have also paid off the $4 million Frost Bank note that we've had for a while. That note was taken out before I even started here as part of the board at that time, wanting monies to be able to do certain things. But anyway, February is the last note on that one, and that payment is $490,000 per year. So if you look at how our debt structure is going, because of the refunding of the bonds, we've got a $500,000 savings this year and next year as well. But after next year, because of the paying off that $4 million note as well, we're going to have $1 million that we didn't have last year, and almost $1 million more than this year in terms of being able to spend on other programs. So looking at how our cash is going to look like, obviously, if all our projections are correct at the end of the fiscal year, this fiscal year, we'll have close to $8.4 million just in cash, not including our land and other holdings. And if you look at our revenues and expenditures and take out what is our deficit, our fund balance, then our cash position next year, at the end of next year, would be still a very healthy $7.1 million. Of that, $2 million is a reserve account. Now, this reserve account doesn't mean you can't use it. It only means it's been placed in reserve when we sold that building. And it takes 4 out of 5 of the board members to vote in favor of removing it from the reserve account so that we can use it for an additional project. We still have $2.5 million remaining from that $4.2 million that we received from the sale of the university center, and then additional funds that we've collected by being frugal of 2.6. So there's a lot of money here for projects that we talked about last week that we could possibly expand. But we're in very good position in terms of our cash position and being able to be responsive to opportunities if the right opportunity comes. Any questions?
Thank you, Riddell. Lots of input into that, clearly. I believe we need a motion to accept the budget.
So moved.
Thank you, Mickey.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Staff reports.
Staff reports. All right. Good on time, guys. Compared to last week, thank you for being patient and for allowing me to go through all that. I know it's a lot of detail. I'll share my screen one more time and talk about my report and just give you a quick update on some of the things that we've been working on. Obviously, aside from working on strategic plans and budgets and programs of work, we've got other things that we're working on. Texas Economic Development Council is one of those things that I'm working on. I've actually been asked to be on a committee, and I'm enjoying being on this committee. That's called the Community Economic Development Award Committee. So for TEDC, we're looking at submittals from, I think there's something like 40 applications this year for Community Economic Development Awards, and they're in different categories. And so I'm one of a group of folks that are from throughout the state that are looking at these and actually grading them and submitting our grades so that they can be all compiled, and then in those different categories, and it's by population, and it's by whether it's a retention project or an expansion project or a community development project, all kinds of different categories. But I'm grading all of them except ours, and we did make a submittal. Celine put something together for our revolving loan program. It was, I call it the revolving loan program. It's a help program, something that I think a lot of other people have been emulating because of the job that you all have helped us do. So we're putting that up for an award, and if it does earn something, then it's more PR for us. If it doesn't, then we at least put ourselves out there. I've also been asked to be a panelist on the peer group roundtable that's coming up for their annual meeting. TEDC's annual meeting will be in mid-September. And I'm going to be bragging about help in particular, and how we set it up and why we did what we did. So not too many people get asked to be a presenter on something like this. And so I'm happy that Harlingen is being represented at the state level on that. And then we're also a sponsor for some of these programs. And so all 4 staff members will be able to attend virtually for the annual conference. If any board member wants to attend this conference, and it's over a 3-day period, or if any city commissioner wants to attend it, just let us know, and we'll be glad to register you and show you how you can participate. Since it's different this year, we don't have to actually travel anywhere. It's just a matter of allocating some time from your busy schedules and dropping in on different parts of the annual conference. It's supposed to be something really cool in terms of the different rooms that are going to be available. So please let us know if you're interested, and we'll be glad to get you lined up for that. On Rio South Texas Economic Development Council, like us, ResTech is working on a new budget and program of work for next fiscal year. And several of our staff members have been very busy working on different committees for ResTech. ResTech is also working on conducting virtual events in the near future. they've got a new member in Restec that's CoStep. And CoStep, if some of you have ever gotten a student loan, CoStep is an organization that services student loans. But over time, they've created a foundation. And this foundation, one of their charges was to actually get very involved in regional economic development here in South Texas. And so CoStep's foundation became a member of Restec. And they've actually kind of taken over and have lent Restec money so that Restec can actually do more and do more outreach. They took on the staff at Restec as part of their staff, and they've done some really neat things that they're being very, I guess, philanthropic is probably the best word. But in their charge, they're going to be promoting regional economic development, not just in South Texas in the Valley, but all the way up to Webb County and also on both sides of the border. So Restec's doing some really neat stuff that a lot of you will hear more about later on in the near future. We've also been involved with the Industrial Asset Management Council. We're going to be a sponsor, and Herman and I will be attending virtually again their annual meeting coming up in the next few weeks. We'll have a booth where people can visit us virtually as well. And then there's an IEDC annual meeting, which we'll be attending virtually as well. Select USA, Herman will be in attendance virtually for that one. And Retail Live, Retail Coach, who we hired to do a lot of our retail marketing, will be representing us virtually. I think Beverly will talk about Retail Coach a little bit more. We heard about it last week in executive session for some of the things that we're working on. On transportation, even this morning I was in a meeting with a steering committee that I'm on for the Texas-Mexico Border Trade Transportation Master Plan. And so we continue to work on that. There's probably, in terms of virtual meetings, 5 of these on a monthly basis that we attend. And some of these meetings are 3 or 4 hour long meetings, but a lot of detail going into how the TxDOT and is going to try to work with not only the U.S. government and U.S. DOT, but also with our counterparts in Mexico on connecting all the different avenues of transportation and making sure that we have efficient trade routes in and out of South Texas and Mexico. And I've also attended the Alliance for I-69 Texas board meeting virtually, of course. On the education front, I'm part of the committee on UTRGV School of Medicine Strategic Plan for Community Health Partners. And we're also working with the city and the school district on broadband availability, as we've talked about in the past. And we will bring back to you some more details on TSDC's Goal Line Assistance Program, what they've done so far and what they'd like to do in the future in our next meeting. So that's my report, and next would be Herman.
Yes, sir. So our Harlingen, to give you an update on the Harlingen Industrial Park, the landscaping project, we're about 60% done. Most of the irrigation is done. We've got a couple of palm trees, some plants. We got more trees coming in middle to end of this week that'll be planted. We still have the area off of Grimes where Fox Valley Molding and Texas Gas Services, the berms are starting to go up on that area. So we're hoping, God forbid, we don't get any more rain. We took a big hit with Hurricane Hannah, brought a lot of water, so that kind of pulled them back a little bit. But we're hoping in the next 30 days we'll be done, or he'll be done with most of the landscaping. Now the project, the problem we get into that is the heat, right? So got to have all these guys that are working out there hydrated. So Okay, next. So besides the projects that we spoke to you all about last week, these are other projects that we've been working on. Some of them are RFPs from the state. Some of them are from other entities. Some of them are just projects of different companies that we've reached out to, or they reached out to us for information on facilities and where they can manufacture or where they can build their different products. So it's been pretty busy these last couple of months. Since March, we had our first Harlingen Manufacturers Association virtual meeting, August 27th. We had a good group of folks. We had about 10 of the different industrial manufacturers. We heard from them everything from shortages of people returning to work because of COVID-19, whether they're afraid or whether they're getting money from the government and decide not to come back to work. So our local employers have resorted to offering incentives, for employees to come back to work. So far, all of them are running at 100%. Some of them are exceeding production expectations. To give you an example, AdTech is working 24-hour shifts, Monday through Friday, 2 shifts on Saturday, and 1 shift on Sunday. One of the problems is having the people that know the different machineries that he's bringing in. So TSCC was on there, so that was really good. It was a real good meeting. We expect to have another one in September. Going to Gazelle and HubSpot, we've sent information to about 299 companies in the automotive, aerospace, manufacturing, and distribution industry. The breakdown is about 20% messages received back from these companies that we've reached out to. 5 of them did say their projects have been put on hold because of the pandemic. 30 of them through HubSpot, we see that they viewed it, they saw the video, and 50 of them have not opened their email. And again, that 50% also takes into account emails that come back. That person is no longer there. Although we do our research, and we go through LinkedIn, make sure that person is still working for that company. So we just don't spend time and effort on that certain company. So on the business retention and expansion, again, all manufacturers are back to normal operations. The hurricane did affect a couple of them, but not most of them. AdTech did get hit by losing power for about 4 days. One of the lines that they manufacture goes to the San Antonio Toyota plant. So of course, last minute I get a phone call, hey, if we don't get this power on, we're going to lose. San Antonio's going to have to shut down one of their lines. So we worked with AAP, and they were fast, and AdTech was able to resume their operations. So that's it, sir.
Thank you. So next would be Beverly.
Hi, y'all. Okay. Basically, if you've seen my report, kind of just briefly go over it and a few things that I'm working on currently. As you can see, there's about 11 commercial projects that takes a lot of time, just doing different things for each one of them, whether it's emails, finding properties, different things such as that. So I've been working with the commercial projects. Really a big part of my activities for the last few months has been the help for small business. Radell graciously had me help assist, and I've been working with those businesses and making sure we have all the proper documentation, getting to know them a little bit, and assisting and working with the committee to help serve some of these businesses with loans. And so I've been working with that a lot. And then attending different trainings, meetings. Because of COVID, it's been a little interesting. Radel mentioned, we've been doing a lot of virtual meetings. And I got to participate last week in an ambassador red coat parade, which was really nice to support some of our local businesses downtown. And then I think we're going to be having several more coming up, and that was interesting to see. If you see a bunch of cars with the police escort honking at businesses, that's what that is. Pretty fun, and hopefully the businesses appreciate it as well. A few things I'm working with Retail Coach. We're working on maybe a virtual meeting to get the brokers, local brokers in the area, to introduce them to Retail Coach, see how that partnership can help each other out. So been working on just different things like that, get phone calls in throughout the day, working with different brokers, people, wanting information on sites. So really that's how my days are spent, and really just being here as a resource to the small business community and to other businesses looking to come to Harlingen, which has actually been pretty steady, and getting many phone calls about that. So that's my quick and short up to date what I'm doing.
Celine, did you want us to use?
Yeah, I'll be sharing my screen. I have a different PowerPoint.
Okay. Well, you're up.
All right. Well, here I am. Okay, so this is, I won't be too long. It's just a quick overview of what we've been working on over the last couple of months. A lot has been very heavily focused on the help for small business. We've been doing a lot of behind the scenes. For me, it's been a lot of push in public, a lot of public relations. So we've been in the news a lot. Radel's been on TV quite a bit. So we've had some great publicity for the HELP program on Telemundo, Somos El Valle, Fox, Univision, Valley Morning Star, Valley Business Report, Texas Board of Business, Rio Grande Guardian, and others, as well as some of the national publications, some trade journals like in Business Facilities, Expansion Solutions. Been in Mexico Industry has covered us. And here's just an example of some really quick searches that we've, where you can find us. RG Vision, TDC featured us in their newsletter. And, just been working on establishing these positive relationships with media and keeping them informed and up to date about what it is that we're doing. Sometimes we do take some advertorials out, and other times the press releases help places in these publications for free. Here's some examples of some more of the recent marketing ads that we've put out. A lot of the stuff is done in-house, which means I work on it, but a lot of the times we do also have these companies create the ads for us. The one on the right here, Collaborating on Our Future, is actually out this month in the RG Vision magazine, and that's a partnership that we did with Workforce Solutions and TSTC on how we help promote and fund their different high demand occupant programs. Onto social media and a website. We're continuing to maintain a relevant presence, and that in turn helps our numbers go up. So here's just a really quick overview of how we're doing within the past year. Website traffic has been up 68.2%. Social media, we're doing great, and a lot of it is because we are being more active on social media and on the website. So in a way, Google awards us for our activity, and we end up showing up much higher in the searches, in Google searches, and in social media algorithms. Branding, as you've probably noticed, our PowerPoints are all now very uniformed, and and we all look the same. So this is kind of setting us up for the new website. I do have updates on that. I know it's been a long time coming. The English website, we started the work on it well, at the end of last year. And then we were put on hold because of the pandemic. They had other projects lined up, but now we're back and running. We've submitted all of our content. I spoke to Joel at ED Suite, and we're hoping, to see some beta pages up and ready for us to critique. And then, once we're ready to launch, obviously we'll let you all know. And I'll also give everyone a chance to review those beta pages before, we say, yeah, go ahead and let's go with this. Here's some of our, this ad is in the RG Vision magazine this month, but it's just, representing the branding that I'm trying to incorporate and keep it very streamlined, keep the same image going. So that way, people begin to recognize that that's a Harlingen EDC ad, that's us. So we're keeping it very, very uniformed and consistent. Ruddell did mention the Choose Harlingen videos. This campaign, I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to feature and profile all the, not all of it, but any business who want to participate and promote themselves and tell us, firsthand why they choose to do business in Harlingen. And this will expand, from the large corporations to the small family-owned businesses. And the purpose of the campaign is to showcase and highlight the, the great success business stories of in Harlingen.
Rodell, Selena, please forgive me, but I'm going to have to excuse myself because we have an audit committee meeting in 2 minutes, and I think maybe one of your members should attend that as well. But nice presentation. Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm going to bug out as well. I have a meeting at noon also. Sorry, but everything was great. And I like the reports. It's been a while since I got to listen to you guys. I usually have a meeting during y'all's meeting. So God bless. Let's keep moving forward. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you. All right.
So Celine,
All right.
I've got to get out also. I've got a meeting at noon. So thank you guys.
Okay.
Good job.
All right. Thank you.
I'm with them, so.
All right. This is literally my last slide. Don't leave. Okay. So the last 3 months has been heavily focused on the help for small business. And we've been working with the loan recipients to help us tell their story. And as far as, the need and why, they applied and just the process in general, and hoping to encourage other Harlingen business owners to apply for the program. So we featured them in the form of video and photos, and it's been a pretty good thing. The business owners greatly appreciate it because it's also adding an additional marketing for their business. So that wraps up my presentation, and I will be doing some more work with other entities such as the Port of Harlingen and Airport and the Bridge. Actually had a great conversation with Amy at the Port of Harlingen, and so we're working. We're going to start working on, figuring out ways to market one another and just work together on some advertisements and such. So that's it for me.
Hey,
Yeah, I've got a quick question, Celine. So those videos, the testimonial videos for the business owners, that's just on our website, or we're distributing those any other way?
Well, I plan to have a press release for each, and I've explained to the businesses and the different companies that are willing to participate that it is an ad for them as well. They'll get to tell us about what they do, what their corporation does, how long they've been in Harlingen and stuff like that. And then we'll go into the meat of it, which is what we want to hear is why they're choosing to do business in Harlingen. And the video will have it'll be maybe 2-3 minute testimonial, and then show some B-roll of their facility and the work that they do. So it'll be on our website. The videos will be on YouTube, and then we'll be sharing them on social media, and I'll be sending them out as press releases with the video embedded.
Do you have the RG Vision video? So where you can share it right now?
I don't have it. They haven't sent me the completed one,
Okay.
the file transfer. But that one's pretty good, and I can send it out as soon as we get that. The article's already out. They have it online, so.
That's it from us.
it.
Celine, those stories on each of the help applicants, those are going to have a shelf life, and I think that's going to be big for years to come for each of those companies that was touched by this program. This is probably the only time they've ever interacted with the EDC, and it's going to have been a positive one. And it almost want to keep doing that, maybe not through a loan, but to highlight a small business and build a repository of those pictures and stories on our website.
Yes, and that's what I plan to do with the Choose Harlingen. It's not just going to be the big companies, but it's also going to be the local businesses. So I do plan to highlight them. I'm working on 2 stories already for some local businesses. One of them, unfortunately, was I had interviewed them right before the pandemic, and I had not been able to share their story just because of all the changes and everything that had taken place. I did keep up with them through the pandemic, and I highlighted them as far as, it was a Procured Life and Home, and then Billy Bandera and Megamorphosis, who shared, what they had been doing as far as adjusting to the pandemic and the different shelter in place ordinances. And so all of that's going to reflect in that story. I actually wrapped it up, and that has a video component as well.
Great.
Mhm.
Thank you all. Is that it on the reports?
We're done.
Yes.
We're done. I think we're done.
That's fast.
Thank you all. I know a lot of work went into it, and I apologize if you feel rushed presenting it. But
No, not at all. No, we're
thank
fine. No, it worked out that we were able to split last week's meeting into 2. Last week you got a taste for what was going on behind the scenes, and this week you got an idea of why we do the numbers that we do.
Yeah.
So
we have some homework on the statement of work and goal setting and whatnot, right?
yeah, and I do too. But I think that we can kind of start collaborating on that a little bit, and I really do want feedback from you all as board members. Mike, Alex, you're brand new to the board, so this is probably a good place to start in, and just from your perspective, looking at what you've seen outside of the organization and now being part of the organization as well would probably be great feedback for us to have from you.
Yeah, and I'd like to say thank you for all the information and thank you all in advance for your patience, because I'm building up a series of questions, but I don't want to appear to be too intrusive. I want to just try to understand first what's going on. So thank you all.
It's been great so far. So thank you.
All right, y'all. I believe we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day.
Y'all too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.